Heist, lawyer guarding ad litem.
Good morning, I'm William Amadeo, P76194 for the department. To my left is my worker. State your name.
Lance Cabins.
Mike. Another workers?
Jamie Dillon, state your name too.
Jamie Dillon, Lenawee BHHS, foster care worker.
Michael McFarland, representing mother. Jessica Gleason, please introduce yourself.
Jessica Gleason, mother.
Noah Bundy of Remington, father of Remington.
Good morning, Ariel Berger here on behalf of Father Mr. Bundy.
All right, as it relates to our bench conference, Ms. Heist, would you like to maybe address that for us?
We had a time for scheduling. We understand that the father's request is still for a jury trial. Mother's request has been changed to a bench trial. We believe that the agency is going to amend the petition to add some details, and also the prayer for relief would possibly go from termination to reunification. In that event, we would anticipate a plea, and we got a pretrial date from the court, and then we had to kick the jury trial that's currently set in one place, had to kick that out to a different date. So I think that's generally what we discussed.
Your Honor, there was also an ICWA issue that we were presented with ICWA documentation prior to court. I think we might need to discuss that.
All right, anything else about the sidebar?
I think that's accurate with GAL.
There is equal information for your honor to review, and I believe you also want to continue the prelim briefly to discuss some things that were not covered last time.
Yes, anything else you'd like to address about the sidebar before we tackle that? Ms. Berger, same question.
I have nothing additional, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, very good. So let's head into our ICWA issue. What do you have there, Mr. Amadeo?
I may approach your honor. My worker has done his equal research, and you can tell the judge what you found in there.
Let me introduce, we're in Mr. Cadmus.
What's your position, Lance?
Children's Protective Services Investigator.
How long have you been in that position?
17 years.
Okay, and how long have you been on this case?
Since February of 2023.
Okay, and do you remember when Judge Sala ruled the previous preliminary hearing that there was probable cause to move forward?
Yes,
There were a few things she was not sure of. Do you remember that?
vaguely.
Okay, one of the things she was not sure was the ICWA documentation. Let's discuss that today. Have you done your research on ICWA?
Yes, sir, I have.
What have you come up with?
I received a notification from the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indian stating that Remington Bunny and neither parent is eligible or registered with that particular tribe.
Judge, did you get a copy? If not, I'll provide the exhibit.
I would love that, thank you. So what I have here is a letter dated March 1st, 2023, from the Department of Human Services Family Safety Program, EVCI, Public Health and Human Services. And it looks like a green card domestic return receipt indicating that they had received what I'm assuming would have been the ICWA request.
Since we were last in Judge Sala's court, has a relative search been sought out?
Yes,
And what'd you come up with?
confirmation was, and suitability was found with Elizabeth Bundy, who was the paternal grandmother.
And she's a resident of Lenawee County?
Yes.
And lastly, and I'm gonna go into brief details, so you have to go to the whole history. CPS history. Did mother have a previous CPS history?
Yes, sir.
And did father have previous CPS history?
Yes, sir.
Without getting into everything, based on your research, is there gonna be a potential goal change in this matter?
Yes.
And what would that goal change be to?
Reunification.
And do you think that's in the best interest of the child?
I do, as long as Miss Elizabeth Bundy is still involved.
Thank you. Nothing further, Judge.
Questions?
Briefly, we still have other ICWA Cherokee searches that are out there, right?
No,
Well, there's more than one Cherokee tribe. We have the Cherokee tribe of Oklahoma, and are you intending to do the other Cherokee tribes?
I did the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indian.
But there's more than one official Cherokee tribe, correct?
Okay.
My client indicated on the record possible Cherokee heritage, correct?
Correct.
There's more than one Cherokee official tribe registered with the federal government. Are you aware of that?
Yes, sir.
So are we going to be doing ICWA search on the other Cherokee tribes?
You're free to do so if you wish.
Really? Yeah, well, you don't think the agency has an obligation to do searches on all the Cherokee tribes?
This is your client. If you wish to find out if your client has Native American heritage, you are free to do so.
I'll let the court-
I completed my search with the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians.
I'll let the court address that.
Questions, Ms. Berger?
This time, Judge, thank you.
Ms. Heiss?
I have no questions, thank you.
Okay,
Briefly, Greg, do you think there's any need to do any further research on ICWA?
No, I don't.
Do you think you did a diligent job with the information you were provided?
Yes, and both clients have stated over the last 3 years that they have no Native American heritage during every CPS investigation.
Thank you.
all right. Anything else to address today then?
Right now, Your Honor, I'm just gonna ask that we follow the ruling earlier, if there was probable cause to move forward. I do believe we may have an amended petition coming our way. Ms. Heiss wants to do her diligence on that, so I'd ask for an adjournment for a couple weeks to effect on.
I don't think due diligence has been done with the ICWA. Mike, there was indication last time, Cherokee Heritage, not Eastern Cherokee. Clearly has not been searched on all Cherokee Heritage, and I'm surprised at the attitude the representative of the agency is taking today.
Well, Your Honor, we'll certainly explore whatever is needed, but based on the fact that both respondents are in the CPS history, there has been history there. They've never identified any Indian heritage. I don't think it was necessarily needed, but if the department needs to do anything more to satisfy Mr. McFarland, and more importantly yourself, we will take care of that.
Well, I'll trust you to look at whether or not the particular band that was notified is the one that's relevant.
Of course.
Mr. McFarland does have a point. There is certainly more than one Cherokee tribe or affiliation. So it is the department's obligation, Mr. Kedmis, to make sure that whether the notice goes to the DIA and then they direct it, or that's typically what it is if you're not sure, as I understand it, but I'll look for you to make sure that we covered all those bases.
Yes, Your Honor.
As you may know, that is one of the easiest things that the Court of Appeals would return a case on. So please make sure that that's covered.
I'd like to have my client testify as far as that. Once again, on the Indian Heritage, it'll take just a minute.
Mr. Kedmis, you can return to your seat. Thank you for your testimony.
Jessica, last time we were in court, you testified that you became aware recently that you may have Indian heritage in your family, correct?
Correct, yes.
And what tribe?
I'm not for certain. My sister did a test through ancestry.com, I believe, and she didn't say what type of Cherokee.
What did she say, Cherokee?
She did say Cherokee, and then I also confirmed with my mother, and she said it was on her side of the family as well.
And did anybody say it was Eastern or Oklahoma or
No, sir.
anything?
No, sir.
You never said that in court, did you?
No.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, any other questions for this witness?
No, thank you, Judge.
No,
None, Your Honor.
Mr. Riverdale, I do have some other documents that look like they were supplied in anticipation of today's hearing. An initial court report, a memo, home study and potential relative placements. Did you want me to just hold these items for the next adjournment?
I would ask that you hold them for next term. I didn't ask for them to be part of the record because we're kind of in limbo. And for that matter, we may not need to go in depth with that.
All right, we will hold these then for adjourned pre, well, we're gonna call today's hearing the pretrial, and we're gonna continue this conversation in a pretrial format on May 15th. So at that point, I think we will need to have a brief review of placement and visitation and some of the other issues, and I look forward to any amendments that would clarify potentially the risks and the services that are being offered on a preliminary basis to the family. But for now, all prior orders will remain in full force and effect. And we'll see you May 15th at 9:30 for the pretrial. We've also rescheduled, given the fact that the jury trial was previously set for April 21st. I had a request to adjourn that in light of the request to amend to consider reunification. Mr. McFarland, you had addressed that during our bench conferences. So did you, Ms. Berger. Do either of you need to talk to your clients about that under oath in order to make sure that they agree to waive their right to that jury trial on that date and time?
My client's agreeable to that, Your Honor. Matter of fact, if there's a trial, she would want to have a bench trial. We discussed that today and we placed that on the record.
So are you formally withdrawing your request for a jury trial?
We are, Your Honor.
Thank you. I'll make a note of that. And then Ms. Berger?
Your Honor, can I briefly ask my client?
Yes.
Okay. You're aware that there was a jury trial scheduled in a couple of weeks for your case?
Yes.
And because the department may be amending what they're asking for, I've secured a new trial date for you. Are you in agreement with that?
Yes.
Okay, so you're waiving your right to that trial this month and you're accepting a new date for that?
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect, thank you.
This week, you're accepting May 26th at 8:30, just so you know. So it's an adjournment for approximately about a month. All right, anything else I can address for the record today?
What's the pretrial again, Your Honor?
May 15th at 9:30.
Thank you.
And the jury trial will be scheduled May 26th at 8:30. And we'll discuss whether or not we need a bench trial at the pretrial. We could potentially run that the same date and time on the 26th, but given the potential amendment, we'll address that particular issue when we come back on a pretrial, as long as that's all right with everyone.
It is.
Okay, I wish you the best of luck. And that's all in this matter for today.
Good morning, Your
We'll
Honor.
get that
Ariel
order.
Berger here as the guardian ad litem.
Good morning, Your Honor. William Amadeo, P7619, work for the department. To my left is my worker.
Caitlin Young, Department of Health and Human Services.
Michael Brooks, I represent the father of one of the children, Aaron Schmidt. Aaron? Oh, you're not Aaron, where's Aaron?
Your Honor, Elias Buwat, representing Bailey Demansky, sitting right next to that handsome lawyer right there.
I'm Bailey Domansky, the mother of Mason and Brandon.
Yes, welcome back. All right, so we'll tackle the question of where your client is, Mr. Brooks. Have you heard from him by any chance?
I have not spoken to him.
All right, so let's go to Ms. Caitlin Young. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
All right, have you heard from Mr. Schmidt by any chance, or know why he would be joining us today?
I spoke to him last week. There were some concerns that were brought to my attention. We moved visits back to supervise temporarily so that I could try to meet with him again. And then he proceeded to tell me that he was done fighting for his kid and that he was no longer going to participate. And I tried to reach out to him again this morning and I got no response from him.
Do you have a proof of service here if you'd like it for the record, Your Honor?
Sure. Has it been circulated to the other counselors? Any objection, Mr. Mawad? to
I don't
moving-
know, juice.
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah. Move the clerk's office. It reflects that Mr. Schmidt was served personally on the 28th with the court order and would indicate today's date. Well, I'm sure we'll be hearing more from Ms. Young in a few minutes. Let's go to our item for your report whenever you're ready, Ms. Burke.
Yes, Your Honor. Obviously, part of my report will be different, probably after the end of this hearing, but I was able to meet with all of the children. I was able to meet with Braden in person in his place. I was able to meet with MW virtually again during this reporting period and their respective placements. They're doing okay. Obviously, MW is having some struggles. There have been multiple reports to CPS. Some things are being substantiated, some things are not. They're mostly coming, I think, from mother's family after visits. So that's a very stressful situation for him. He is exhibiting some behaviors, but he is enrolling counseling at University of Michigan. So he's able to hopefully work through some of those issues that he's having related to visits over the last year or so. Otherwise, he's doing okay. I was able to speak with his grandmother as well. I'm sorry, his great grandmother as well. And very typical boy behaviors, running around, playing with cars, playing with trucks. He's very, usually very engaging and to talk to, sometimes difficult to understand, but does like to show off his toys. But I believe he will be receiving a trauma assessment, possibly a CAC interview related to some of his behaviors that he's been exhibiting. There's been some like pulling down of pants in public and at home, asking others to do the same thing. So there are still some concerns there. His father was able to get a friend of court order for his respective county that does have parenting time listed out in there. So if this case were to close, that would be the parenting time that would pick up. I was also able to, like I mentioned, visit with BS. He is doing great. He's a great eater. He was, very, very happy and covered in head to toe after dinner when I was there. So that was fun with food all up his nose and everything. Up until very recently, father was doing very well. He was completing all of his services. He was in counseling. He was doing supportive parenting. And then about maybe 3 weeks ago, there were some concerns reported by placement. So his parents, and by the agency, he wasn't engaging. He wasn't able to begin orchards. Today is the first time hearing that he no longer wants to engage because he was very close. So it's fairly confusing to me. But I was recommending expanded parenting time for him. And to be honest, if he does re-engage, I would recommend that going forward. He has shown that he has worked through all of the stressors that led him to the CPS case. The notes from his counselor show that he's completed those goals that he's been working on, that he's able to identify triggers, a lot of different things that he has proven to have overcome. So it's difficult and hard to understand why at this point he no longer wishes to engage. At this point, I'm just recommending that mother's parenting time continue as scheduled. I don't believe her criminal matter has been resolved. And to be honest, once it even is resolved, I still think we're going to have very serious conversations about what this case will look like. So at this time, I'm recommending that their placements remain the same, that MW continue in his counseling, that BS continue with his early on evaluation, and that we reevaluate father's participation probably today. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Department goes Caitlin Young. How long have you been in that position?
I have been working as a foster care specialist for about 12 years now.
How long have you worked on this case?
I've been on this case since the beginning of February when we had the caseworker change.
Fair to say you know more about this case than anybody else?
At this time, yes.
All right, what's the current permanency goal for children?
The current goal still remains reunification.
Is there a concurrent goal?
The concurrent goal would be adoption.
So to be clear, reunification is still where you're at right now.
That's correct.
All right. Has the respondent mother rectified the barriers that cause the child to come to your care?
She's working on those barriers. She's working diligently with her services. She's doing her supervised parenting time as scheduled, continues to make progress.
Okay. And you feel this despite her pending criminal matters, is that accurate?
Correct.
How about respondent father? What's going on with Aaron Schmidt?
I don't know the full details of everything that's going on. I know little bits and pieces. He's indicated to me that he no longer wants to participate. He's giving up. He's very frustrated with everything that's going on. There's just been a lot of stuff that was brought to my attention by the relative placement, as Ms. Berger had stated, a lot with his mental health. There's not necessarily criminal activity from him. There was an issue of communication where his phone got stolen by somebody who ended up going to jail in another county, and he had to go and recover his phone from that. I did verify that with the police department in the other county. He had since gotten his phone back. I had spoken to him briefly last week before I was off for part of the week on vacation. But he's just not cooperating at this point. I don't know how we can try to re-engage him. He was very close to being reunified. We were looking at recommending that again today, but because of the incidents that's happened recently and the lack of communication and progress that he's made just since the last court hearing, that we're no longer recommending that at this time until we can try to re-engage him in services.
Let's hit this point home because he's got family members here. And as somebody who knows this case for anybody else, is it true you just testified that you wanted to reunify with him?
We did, yes. We were looking at reunifying with him.
Is that still a possibility if he follows your lead?
If we can get him to re-engage in services, then absolutely, we would still consider that.
And would it be fair to say you would need him to re-engage in a short period of time?
Yes.
Okay. So you have criminal charges facing?
Not that I'm aware of, no. I tried to do a search within the other surrounding counties, and I saw no pending or no recent jail or whatnot, because there was that communication issue, so I was doing a search on that. But there was nothing that I found at this time.
Would there be substantial risk of the children return home today?
At this time, until we're able to get clarification on kind of what's going on with Mr. Schmidt, there would be a risk of harm.
Are you recommending any goal changes right now?
No, we're not.
Has there been a change to these children's placement during the review period?
No,
Are they together?
no, they are not.
Right.
They're in separate places at this time.
Are they able to see each other at all? Is there any bond that's not being followed with the kids not being near each other?
There has been some issues in getting sibling visits reestablished. A lot of it is with the distance. Mason's placed with, or MW, excuse me, is placed with his respondent or non-respondent father, who is present here today. And they live in the Flint area. So the distance between where the children are and making sure that they're here for visits at the same time has been very difficult. We were able to get a visit in last week where both of them were there. We had done a FaceTime visit the prior week where I was present, was able to help facilitate that. So they do have a bond. I was talking to MW's placement this morning about the visit last week and how when they were walking in, they were holding hands, they were excited to see each other and spend that time. They had the full 2 hours together, and they were pretty excited. From my understanding, it went well.
Is it possible to consider case closure in reference to MW at the next review hearing?
I think at the next review hearing, I know his father was working on doing a new custody order with Genesee County, so he was trying to get that filed with that county. And once we have that, then we would be recommending to close his portion of the case.
And BS with relative placement, is that correct?
That is correct.
To your knowledge, how's that going?
It's going very well. Ms. Berger, stated some of her observations. He's very engaging. He does very well with the placement. He's been there about a year, and he's very bonded to his grandparents. They do very well with him. He just started a new daycare this week, so he was kind of excited to go see the new facility, and indicated that he did very well. She got a picture and she was showing me how happy he looked at his new facility today. And so far, he's doing very well. He does have an early on evaluation coming up. They were going to evaluate to see additional services that he might need for speech or PT or OT if that was necessary. But he does show some delays in speech, but he can easily be rectified to the early on services.
What's the current parenting time plan?
Currently, we just expanded mom's parenting time, so they're Mondays and Fridays. And I think they're just changing the time, I believe 10 to noon. It was 9 to 11 previously, and we moved it to 10 to noon to accommodate both the facilitators' schedule, mom's schedule, dad's schedule. So that way it would kind of flow a little better.
That's
A lot of schedules we're working with in this manner.
Are you recommending any changes to that at this time?
At this time, no.
Have the placement, I guess I should say, exercise reasonable and prudent care with all these children?
Yes.
Is there any additional needs these children need that you know of?
At this time, the only need with MW, we were working on trying to get the trauma assessment set up based on some new allegations that came forth. We've had 7 centralized intake calls since I took over this case in February. So there's a lot of concerns, a lot of reports, a lot of he said, she said. So we're trying to get to the bottom of everything. We were recommending a CTAC evaluation. I contacted the CTAC at Western Michigan to see if we can get them in there. They're scheduling out till June. So they recommended a facility that's in the Detroit area that had immediate openings. I've also been in contact with our Lenawee office, playing phone tag, trying to get him in even there if that was a possibility. So we're working on getting that set up as soon as possible, so that way we can kind of see what exactly we're working with, what additional services he may need to address some of these sexualized behaviors.
And just to be clear for the record, in case somebody ever in the future is reading this, they don't understand these cases, is 7 a lot?
It is a lot, yes. That's just since I took over the case. There's been multiple prior to that, all very similar allegations.
Was this an expedited review hearing?
It was, yes.
Why was that necessary?
We expedited that so that way the courts had an opportunity to read through Mr. Schmidt's psychological evaluation, which I provided following the last court hearing, and then to take a look at if we were going to continue with that reunification at this hearing.
Based on being so close knowledgeable to this case, are you personally disappointed that Mr. Schmidt's not participating right now?
I am, because he does have a really good bond with his son and had a lot of potential. He had his whole home residence set up for him. He had a good relationship with his parents. And I don't know what happened. He's expressed a lot of frustration and based on reading his psychological, I mean, it kind of makes sense with some of the trauma that he suffered from his car accident years ago. So,
Anything else you want Judge Sala to know about today?
at this time, I don't believe there is anything else.
This time, Your Honor, we're going to ask the court report supporting documents be given the evidence. I also did hand you the proof of service earlier today.
No objection.
Nothing
No
further for this witness from me.
No objection.
No objection.
Okay. Just by way of brief review, what I have for today is the court report, drug test results, a letter from Ms. Gray, counseling records, and the psychological evaluation as referenced in her testimony. They are received. Any questions for this witness, Mr. Brooks?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Mawad?
Judge, I do. Ms. Young, nice to see you. Ms. Berger, thank you for your attachment to JC 82. Okay, I get where you're coming from. Ms. Young, am I understanding correctly that Bailey is seeing MW and BS consistently, or is there an issue with visitation?
Prior to me taking over the case, the visitation was kind of all over the place. The transportation back and forth to Flint and back was very difficult. I guess there's one addition thing I do want to add. So I did do a referral to Family Matters, which is a facility up in the Flint area that will be taking over the Friday visits for MW and Ms. Demansky. So that way the child's not traveling at long distance, because it's very hard on him.
No,
it's a very
I
long
understand.
distance. So that is going to be a further change. That's going to we're going to be working on that schedule too, as far as VS's visitation, but we'll work around that as much as we need to, and still try to continue with those Friday visits for him as well.
Is there any way that you foresee by our next court date, and we should have the criminal matter wrapped up in early May, of giving more visitation to Bailey with BS and MW?
We are working on trying to expand that. Again, with the distance, it's been very challenging. We've got both kids that reside out of the county, so we're expecting a lot out of them to travel here as it is to Lenawee County. Both of them, we got one in Flint in Genesee County, and then we have one in Washtenaw County. So we're trying to do the best that we can to try to expand the time for when they are here Mondays and Fridays. So we just recently started the Friday visits in addition to the Mondays.
Your plan is obviously continued reunification. Is that what I heard from the original questioning?
That is correct.
All right. And I have read the psychologicals of Bailey. It sounds like would you agree, doing well with her treatment and continued treatment for any issues?
Based on what I've read, yeah, she is making improvement. She's in a controlled setting. She's doing very well with that. She's continued with her therapy. I believe they just discharged her through Catholic Charities. She completed their program. So, and that report, I believe, is with the court documents. But she did complete that. She's, continuing with the supervised visits. We did move the visits back to our office so that we closely monitor some of those interactions between her and Mason. MW. I mean, she's doing well with those interactions.
You get along with her, Caitlin? Do you get along with her?
The interactions I've had with her have been positive.
Okay. All right. Now, I did read, and I think you testified to, that there's some reports, potentially 7 to CPS, regarding, is it potential CSE with the father? Is that what I'm new to this? So if I don't know, I just trying to get caught up on it. That's all.
Like, I outlined the allegations in the court report, so all of those allegations, that's occurred just since the last court hearing are outlined in there. So there are 2 that have potential CAC accusations. One, that leans more towards the non-respondent parent, where he's placed, and then another one with, the paternal grandmother, from when he was doing a visit with her, prior to a face-to-face at our office.
Okay,
So those are still pending investigation. I know law enforcement was getting involved because it does involve CAC. I'm trying to track down where we're at with those allegations and which department was investigating.
okay. I think, you've answered my questions. I thank you very much. Very much. Thank you.
Miss Young, do you know anything about mother's plan for her criminal case?
I do not at this time.
And is she facing a felony charge right now?
I believe it is, yes. From my understanding, it was a child abuse 1 charges. And I know it was going to trial in May. I just don't know the specific details of what to expect at that hearing.
Okay.
Judge, if you don't mind, I'll make it pretty simple. So she's charged with CS of child abuse first. There's been an offer of child abuse second. There's going to be a plea on that. Then there'll be a sentencing determine if she's in a straddle cell or what the ramifications of that are going to be. I just thought I'd butt in just to speed things up. My apologies, just Sala, and to Ariel. Sorry.
Miss Young, is it agency policy to ever unify with a parent that has a felony conviction for any sort of child abuse?
I don't know the specifics around that, but I will definitely take a look into that policy or the case law specific to that. This is the first time that I've ever had an encounter with that kind of a situation where it was that severe. So I would need to look into that.
As far as respondent father, about when did he start to withdraw from the matter, if you recall?
He was starting to withdraw really when I took over the case. I came into court in place of Miss Fletcher, and coming into that, I had very limited contact with him. We had tried to set up FRP services. They were not having any luck with getting in touch with him. So really, it's been the past couple of months. He had previously engaged with Orchards, who FRP is through. He completed the FAP program. There was no concerns. And then we hit February and it kind of went downhill from there.
Okay, thank you.
Can you remind me if Ms. Demansky's psychological was sent over to Ms. Gray?
I believe it was. I'll have to check the case file and just make sure. I believe Ms. Fletcher did send it to both agencies, so to their respective therapists.
Yes, I do have confirmation attached to Mr. Schmidt's that I went over to Dimensions of Wellness, which I think is Mr. Schmidt's counselor.
It is.
But I don't know that we ever received actual confirmation that Ms. Demansky's went.
I can double check the case file just to make sure, but it's right at this point. I mean, she's been discharged from their therapy services, so
I saw that. Thank you. Okay, redirect, Mr. Amadeo.
None, thank you, Judge.
Any other questions? Lisa, no questions, counselors?
None, Your Honor.
All right, thank you for your testimony. You may return to your seat.
Mr. Rowe, can you explain relationship to this case?
Father, grandfather
Father of who?
of Aaron Schmidt, grandparent, BS.
So it was your desire to testify today, correct?
Yes.
Can you explain to Judge Sala why you want to testify?
We started noticing odd behavior, couldn't get a hold of Aaron, could be a text, phone, communication. This was just prior to the last family team meeting we had. Some of the workers involved noticed some changes as well. We couldn't put our finger on it because it was so close to reunification. Everybody was on board with it, and The judge wanted to see extended supervised visits and a psychiatric evaluation prior to it. So he was almost there, and he made some confessions to us about some things that have been going on.
What did he confess to?
I just say bad people getting arrested, police chasing him, his car's getting wrecked. He's even posting it on Facebook, so it's not even that much of a secret. Drugs he's doing, drugs he's selling. Even human.
Before you go any further, sir, let me just say, I will ask you questions, but what you're saying could potentially incriminate your son. Do you understand that before we proceed?
I understand that. I'm not.
And I'm going to ask some follow-up questions. So let me ask you this. Are you sure you want to continue to testify right now? Because you don't have to. Other lawyers may ask you questions, but you told me you want to testify. I didn't know we were going down this road. This is sort of court I'm telling you right now.
I did write some letters, and I requested that the letters be passed on for those that need to read, such as the judge, which would give some of the information as well. We've talked to the caseworker about some of the information as well. Our bottom line is we want Aaron to get help. He's the father of BS, and we want him in his life, but we can't make the choices for him.
And from what you testified today, he is potentially involved in some criminal activity.
Yes.
And he's also posting about that criminal activity on social media.
Not so much the criminal activity, but the wrecking of his vehicles and yeah.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden he's turned on his mother for no reason.
What do you mean by that?
He posted that on Facebook. I hate you, you're not my mother, you're dead to me, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
How often have you had contact with Aaron?
Basically a visitation. My wife was having contact with him. He pretty much stays to himself.
So the information you're testifying to today, was that provided to you at visitations?
It was provided after the family team meeting.
I have nothing further this time.
Questions, Mr. Brooks?
No.
Mr. Mawad?
None.
Ms. Berger?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I'm sorry that you had to bring that to my attention.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And Mr. Cody West would like to testify.
Mr. West, come on up to our witness stand.
What is your relationship to this matter?
I'm the father of MW.
What did you want to add for Judge Sala today? Because you did tell me you wanted to testify.
Yeah, these allegations that are against me, they need to stop because it's hurting me a lot and nothing's going on. I'm good to that boy. I gave that boy a home, and this is ridiculous. Like I go through enough every day with all of this court stuff. Okay, it's hard on me. It's not easy being his dad, and it's not easy with all this court stuff and all these CPS workers coming in and out of my home. I'm kind of fed up. Like I'm shaking right now because I'm just mad.
I understand.
Like I'm good to that boy. I've been good to that boy since day one.
Do you understand that because you're on the stand right now, I could potentially ask you questions which could potentially lead to a criminal prosecution? I want to warn you about that before we go.
That's fine.
Okay.
Nothing to hide.
I understand, but I want you to tread carefully here, sir, okay?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay. You said you're upset about CPS. Do you understand CPS is doing their job?
Yeah, I love CPS. That you know, I mean, I've had everyone, but I've went with their role the whole time. Like I've been following the rules every time.
Why do you think these allegations are being made about you?
Well, I think it's retaliation.
What do you mean by that?
We've had problems, a lot of problems.
Can you elaborate on that?
Me and Bailey. Can I say that right?
Yeah.
Me and Bailey have had a lot of issues in the past.
So do you think Bailey's making up allegations?
I don't think it's Bailey.
Who do you think it is?
I'm not gonna point fingers. because I don't know who it is.
Well, respectfully, you just said you think people are making things up.
They are.
Who is they?
Huh?
Who is they?
I think it's your family, to be honest.
So to be clear, you believe that Bailey's family is making up allegations
Yes.
about you
100%.
potentially molesting your child?
Molesting?
Yeah, they said there were 7 allegations. Molestation is probably where we're
Oh,
going.
well, none of it's true.
All right, thank you. I've heard from me.
Questions, Mr. Brooks?
No.
Mr. Mawad?
No, Judge.
Ms. Berger?
None, Your Honor. Thank you.
Your Honor, just for a point of clarity, Mr. Rawad should jump in. Are her guidelines 0 to 18? Do you know?
I do
Well,
know her
Bailey's
no, I do know her guidelines are a straddle cell for that charge. Again, a lot of it's going to depend upon the PSI. Obviously what the Judge Anzalone is seeing as far as her psychological that's going to be presented to her. So I can't tell you exactly, Mr. Amadeo, what the sentence is going to be, but she is in a straddle cell, which allows her to get probation.
So I'm looking at the B grid right now that she would be on, and probation is a possibility, to be clear, correct?
It is. For
Okay.
a child abuse 2, it is, and I did talk to the assistant prosecutor on the case regarding that.
Did you ask for a call with Judge Anzalone to probation or not?
We haven't done that yet. We have the next date coming up, which I'm going to do, and we have not done that yet. So right now I can't tell you whether she'll grant it or not, but I know that the assistant prosecutor has to object to it.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, anytime.
This testimony today, Mr. Brooks?
I have no client and I have no witnesses.
Mr. Mawad?
Judge, I just want to ask Bailey a couple of questions, and because I'm trying to decipher some of the stuff that I received in the JC 82 report. And it is really just a couple of things. If I could just ask her, please. That's all.
Sure. Good morning.
Bailey, I know that we've talked over the phone, and I met with your grandparents in my office while they were over here.
Yes.
How do you feel visitation's going with both of the minors? So, tell me how you feel about it.
Honestly, I think that it's going very well. The only issue is they're overstimulated because they haven't seen each other for a while. So they get like really hyper and want to play with each other because they haven't seen each other in a while, but I think it's going very well. They're adapting to each other again. They're playing with each other very well. Mason MW keeps asking BS like what is he saying, but other than that, I think visitation is going very well.
How are they reacting towards you, Mom? Are they glad to see you, or tell me a little bit
Yes,
about that?
they get very excited when they see me.
Okay.
They always like run to me, or Mason runs to me. They both run to me. They hold each other's hands.
Okay. All right.
Very lovely.
Bailey, you understand we've got to get through the criminal matter first before any finality is made, and I need to talk to Ms. Berger at some point in time regarding her report, but I can't disclose it to you, but I do need to talk with her, and most likely Caitlin. You're getting along fine with Caitlin, correct?
Yes.
And are there any more services that you have to complete as we sit here today?
As of right now, not to my own knowledge.
Okay. Are you going to continue psychological therapy, or do you think you're going to do that?
I think I'm going to, since I've already completed the services for counseling, I think I'm still continuing to go for myself.
Okay. I don't have any more questions. I just wanted to get something out as to what the status was. Thank you, Judge. Appreciate it.
Ms. Domansky, do you know, does your counselor have a copy of your psychological evaluation?
I'm pretty sure she does.
Questions, Mr. Amadeo?
When are you set to plea, do you know?
I think, to my knowledge, it might be in May.
Do you understand if your lawyer gets you no upfront jail, that you'll have probation hanging over you, and if you violate probation, you could do some serious time?
Yes.
Okay. Do you understand if you get a jail sentence, you could still be facing prison if you commit a probation violation?
Yes.
do you realize everything he's telling you to do is to advance your chance for unification? Thank you. That'll be perfect.
Okay, any questions, Mr. Brooks?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Berger?
Ms. Berger, can you smile? I saw your face. I got a joke about it. You're funny. Thank you.
I think I'm going to reserve until after the plea date, Your Honor.
Thank you for your testimony. May I return your seat?
Thank you, Judge. Initially today, we were going to ask for a 45-day review. Honestly, with the testimony that was provided today, I'm not sure if Mr. Schmidt's going to be an active participant. I don't know if he's going to get a warrant at some point. And I purposely didn't go further with that. I didn't want to incriminate Mr. Schmidt, hoping things get together. As far as what Mr. West testified to, I don't know if Mr. Mansky's family is creating false allegations. I'm just not sure. Here's what I do know. I certainly hope that Mr. Mansky gets no upfront jail, and I hope we can get reunification. As of today, that's still gonna be my position, and based on, I'm gonna ask for a 90-day review, and I hope I can sort some of this stuff out. If I cannot, and I'm still in the case, I want to have a very different conversation with you, but for right now, that's where I stand. Thank you.
Any comments, Mr. Brooks?
Well, it sounds like Mr. Schmidt is grabbing victory from the jaws of defeat, or defeat from the jaws of victory. And I don't really have a whole lot I can say.
Mr. Mawan?
Judge, do you want to set a date for the middle of May? Do we have to go out 90 days, or what's your preference to see what happens? Or you want to see what happens at sentencing, right? I take it.
Yes, our next review and permanency planning hearing will be scheduled for July 18th at 10 a.m.
Okay, yeah, we'll know by then. And Ms. Berger, is it okay if I give you a call or email you to try to set up a call with you?
Yeah.
And Caitlin's fine too. I don't mind talking to the both of you. Okay? Okay.
Any comments, Ms. Berger?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm really having a tough time with this case. Mr. Schmidt was so very close. We were here less than 90 days ago, and I was recommending more and more time. It's confusing and it's difficult, but as we know, sobriety is not always linear. And if that is what Mr. Schmidt is struggling with right now, I do hope that he reaches back out so that he can really
Sorry, I missed the last bit.
yes. I do hope that Mr. Schmidt reaches back out so he can engage in services and continue on the path that he was previously.
Ms. Berger, I have some serious concerns about continuing to allow him to have parenting time based on the statements that were made on the record today. Do you share those concerns?
Yes, I was just about to say that I would recommend that we suspend parenting time until he does reach back out. That way we have some finality in the order related to his status as a respondent parent in this case. As far as for Ms. Domansky, I do applaud her progress, that she's done everything that the agency has asked of her, that she's completed counseling, and that she continues to do so. But I don't know that those things will rectify my concerns. So I will have to really review more notes from the counselor in depth. I'll probably be subpoenaing those just to make sure that all of these concerns are properly addressed, because I have yet to make a recommendation of reunification to a parent that's been convicted of felony child abuse. So I think that's where I stand. I would ask for a 90-day review and ask that we get that clarification for Mr. Schmidt's suspended parenting time in the order. Thank you.
I think it would be quite useful as well to have Ms. Gray testify potentially in our next review about how and whether she was able to address the issues that were raised in the psychological evaluation for Ms. Domansky. I've been very clear that I shared that those concerns were very real for ensuring the safety of the children in the case, and Ms. Domansky indicated she understood that. I know she's been working hard on that, but there were some very concrete steps outlined in that recommendation, and I'd like to confirm that those have been followed so that we are making sure that the child is safe, but also that Ms. Domansky's had all the support that she can get in making progress on those goals that were outlined very clearly by Dr. Howey. So I don't think I'll be issuing my own subpoena for her, but it could be very useful to us in the future. So I just wanted to signal that to you, Mr. Malloy.
I hear you, Judge. I hear you. Thank you. I believe I did prepare a subpoena for today, but because it was just a review hearing, I didn't think it'd be much fruitful, but I'll send one to her and we'll get her over here for testimony. That's fine.
All right, we'll make some extra time then at our next hearing to make sure that we can tackle anything and everything that we need to, including her testimony.
Very good.
The court finds all interested parties were given notice for today's review hearing. Obviously, there were some pretty significant developments in the last month or more of this particular case. I can find that the children are currently in the safest and least restrictive environments for them to continue making progress, seeking services. Certainly, Ms. Young is supporting them in securing reasonable efforts towards a goal of reunification, including both analysis and monitoring of services for the children and the parents in this case. I look forward to the trauma assessment. I think that's a very real and accurate, necessary next step, and I appreciate that Ms. Young has already anticipated that and has that in the works. In addition to our other efforts, very thoroughly outlined in our court report and in her testimony. So thank you. I also want to acknowledge Ms. Berger's unsatisfaction of her obligations as guardian ad litem. I do concur based on the indications that we heard on the record today, and frankly, the absence of Mr. Schmidt, that there are significant risks associated with allowing him to have parenting time. If there is a change, and parenting time is recommended to resume prior to our next review hearing, I would look for any request to resume that parenting time to be made with Ms. Berger's blessing, and the investigation, of course, of some of the issues that were raised today. His parenting time will be suspended until our next review, and I'll be looking at that as well as any progress that he might be able to make on those areas identified in the case services plan, and then potentially the issues that were identified today. So the children will remain in their placements pending our next review hearing, which will also be our permanency planning hearing. And I look forward to the developments in the areas outlined today, including the specifics on progress in the Dr. Haugen recommendation for Mr. Mansky, resolution of the criminal matter, and the opinion of our guardian ad litem on that. I cannot find today that the risk of harm identified in the initial petition has been alleviated, although I want to recommend Ms. Demansky on record for her progress. So we'll have our next review and permanency planning hearing July 18th at 10 a.m. Unless there's any questions, that's all.
Afternoon, Your Honor. William Amadeo, P76194 for the department.
Michael Brooks, I represent Samantha Michaelek, mother of the children.
And Ms. Berger.
Good morning, Ariel Berger here on behalf of Father Robert Paul.
Ms. Hines.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was able to observe these children in two different environments. One was, I observed a parent visit and just got really curious and went to the foster placement and observed them there. You can see the level of services in place for this family. We're at 6 months. We've had family team meetings. We've worked this thing through. I'm recommending a goal change. I know that it's early, but these children have all kinds of medical issues going on that mom and dad aren't attending to. I think Ms. Edwards is very generous to the parents, although accurate in her reporting. When I was there, mom's cursing is just shocking. If that's the best you can do with Linda Edwards and me in the room. However, the kids can't hear, but still it matters. It does matter. That's her best parenting. So they've missed a lot of visits. They've come to visits where they had to be asked to leave. The children are not bonded with their parents, and it really surprises me because dad has hearing issues and he doesn't get in front of his child and show him the diaper. I'm going to change your diaper. You know, they just kind of snatch him and lay him down, and he's just kind of not understanding what's happening. You would think that dad would have extra skills, you know, show a block and say the color. I don't think the oldest child can hear very well at all. And he's not being stimulated during visits. He's not He's not connected with mom and dad. They have some parenting skills, you know, they can change diapers and one takes care of one child while the other's taking care of the other. The older child also has vision issues and gastroenteritis. The little one, you'll remember the pictures when he came into care, was gaunt, was bruised on his face. This little guy has been in foster care now since very early in his life, and he is now in the 50 percentile for height and weight. And although he does have some deficits, not as much deficits as the child who was in parents' care longer. It's early in the case to ask for a change in goal. However, there has not been improvement. We've had parenting classes, we've had in a family team meeting, mother went overboard to tell us how many ways that Miss Edwards shows her the parenting schedule. It gets texted to them. There's a picture of it. It's handed to them physically. It's discussed with them. And we still have this many misses. It's leading to a sincere lack of bond between the children. So then alternatively in the foster home, these folks are taking the children to all of their audiology appointments. The day that Jameson, the older child, gets his hearing aids, I can't wait to see the world when he can hear. And these folks are missing those appointments right along. The little guy's doing so well. So in the foster home, there is a care provider that is in the family who watches eyes on 24/7. The older child has some really interesting, I think, effects of neglect early on. His play, it can be very destructive. It can be very focused on maybe getting a plug-in cord, an extension cord, and those kinds of things. He's very focused, but on something that wouldn't be for a child. He has changed a lot in his environment. He couldn't be touched in the beginning. Now he comes to his caregiver and touches, you know, her leg and lets other people touch him now. Anyway, the children are doing very well in the foster care. This care is available to provide permanence for the children. I just don't see the progress. I think if we change the goal, it always gives mom and dad time to do something else. But, you know, get employment, show us a lease. These are easy things to do, let alone get into your counseling. Follow what Mrs. Edwards is making phone calls with these folks to set up CMH, to set up the unemployment agency and all those kinds of stuff, and they're not following through. I didn't see in mom's psychological evaluation a whole lot of acceptance of responsibility for why the children came into care. That's concerning to me, as well as the other alerts that the doctor pointed out. I would suggest that maybe we do some, amend the case service plan to include drug screening. Mom seems to be relying on THC for self-care. And although that can be helpful, help her sleep, because her lack of sleep is really something that she blames for a lot of her failure to perform schedules and developmentally appropriate things for the children. If she were willing to take a doctor's recommendation on dosage and timing, and she may have more success than self-medicating. I'd like to move her towards that if possible. But anyway, these children will do better if they're raised by their parents. If their parents are able to reduce the risk that brought the children into care. These parents haven't done that, and it's 6 months. It's early, but I think we need to go there. Thank you.
Your Honor, can I say something?
No.
You'll have an opportunity to testify at a later time, and I'll trust your counsel to advise you. Mr. Amadeo.
Thank you, Your Honor. Honorable Stephanie Hamlin.
Ms. Hamlin, come on up for witness stand.
What's your position, Stephanie?
Foster care specialist for the Department of Health and Human Services.
How long have you been in that position?
Almost 11 years.
You've worked in multiple counties, is that true?
Yes.
Were you assigned to this case?
Yes.
How long have you been on this case?
Since mid-December.
Is it accurate that you submitted a 158-page court report for Judge Sala to review today?
Yes.
Based on that, would it be fair to say you know more about this case and the 3 children than anybody else?
I believe so.
What's the current permanency goal for the children?
So JR's goal is listed as reunification. However, we're encouraging her non-respondent parent that she resides with to file for custody through his local friend at the court. The permanency goal for JD and AD is reunification.
Is there a concurrent goal for each?
Yes, for JD and AD, the concurrent goal is adoption.
Has the respondent mother rectified the barriers brought to children in your care, I should say?
No,
How about respondent father?
no.
You explained to Judge Sala what services you offered, discuss the parents' level of compliance with those services.
So in December, when I came onto the case, they were already doing parent aid services with Ms. Linda Edwards, as well as having Ms. Edwards supervise parent-child visits. They have continued with the parent aid services. Ms. Mikulak and Mr. Paul both completed their psychological evaluations as requested. We are still waiting for the recommendations from Mr. Paul's. Ms. Mikulak wanted to hold off on any additional services beyond parenting education at the Care Pregnancy Center until she received the psychological evaluation results, which do recommend individual counseling. So she, as of this morning, was referred for individual counseling with a virtual provider, as she indicated that that would be better for her scheduling and participation wise. Ms. Mikulak has reported that she is involved with the Care Pregnancy Center for parenting education. However, her participation with them is about the same as her participation in parent-child visits and medical appointments. Mr. Paul did complete a phone call to CMH. They indicated to him that he would not be eligible for services through them and recommended that he go to, I believe it's Adrian Psychiatry. Mr. Paul's indicated to Ms. Edwards and myself a couple different times that he would go and get the paperwork to start that. However, I've not been provided any documentation.
You believe there'd be substantial risk to these children if they were returned to their parents' care and custody today?
Yes.
What do you think the harm would be?
My biggest concern is a risk of homelessness. There's been no lease provided, there's been no budget provided, there's minimal employment. There's also concern for medical neglect. They've not attended 90% of the appointments since the children have come into care. I would be concerned for malnutrition, as when AD came into care, he was severely underweight. I would have concerns for Ms. Mikulak has a very short fuse, and when she becomes frustrated, I would be concerned for the children's safety. She's not harmed them that I am aware of, but I would be concerned as the children's needs continue to escalate that could be a potential.
You recommending a goal change today?
At this time, no. I would support Ms. Heiss's recommendation, but the parents, if they don't make significant progress in the next 90 days, I would be recommending a goal change at that time. We've had multiple FTMs where I've discussed the biggest concern is the lack of involvement for the parenting time and the medical appointments, and that has not been rectified.
You've worked extremely hard in this case. That's clear from your paperwork alone. When Ms. Heiss was making a recommendation, were you paying attention?
Yes.
Did you take notes?
Yes.
Did you just testify you would support her?
Yes.
Has there been a change to these children's placement during the review period?
No.
Are the siblings, that there's 3 of them, are they seeing each other at all?
So they have not had any in-person visits. I am working to get virtual visits started. It is almost a 2-hour drive between the 2 placements, and I don't feel that that is fun for a child to sit through. With reunification looking less and less possible, I would continue on the path of virtual sibling visits.
The current parenting time plan.
Right now, each parent is offered 6 hours a week. Ms. Edwards has worked out a schedule where they each do about 4 hours together, and then they each do an hour and a half to 2 hours separate. And then the parents are requested to attend all medical and developmental appointments. JD just started a play group at the ISD. This morning was his first class. It is twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays from 8 to 9:30. I did ask respondent parents that they participate at least in 50% of his classes. They indicated Tuesdays was the best day for them to go. However, they did not attend this morning's class.
Recommending any changes to the parenting time plan.
Not at this time. We are looking at adding an additional service, Ocurrs, as Ms. Michalak and Mr. Paul indicated that it would be better for them to have in-home parenting visits, as there would be less concern for transportation issues or missed visits.
Still at the placements, are they continuing to exercise prudent care? These children?
Yes.
Are there any additional needs that children need or not being met?
Not at this time. JD's hearing aids should be delivered and fitted, I believe, this week or next week. AD's got surgery scheduled for May 4th to have tubes put in his ears. At that time, because he will already be under anesthesia, they plan to do the auditory brainstem testing that JD had already gone through. And that should give some confirmation of what level of hearing impairment AD will have. They don't believe it's going to be as severe as JD. They're very hopeful that the tubes alone will be enough. However, he may also need hearing aids. And then JD is on the wait list for the genetics department at U of M. The ISD team has some concern that he's got some type of a syndrome from the type of hearing loss he has, the extensive developmental delays, and then from facial appearance, they have some concerns. So he is on the wait list, I believe 9 to 12 months out.
You mentioned misappointments in your testimony. Can you elaborate a little more on that?
I believe during this review period, there were approximately 10 appointments and respondent parents attended 2 of them. I'd have to double check my court report for.
To the best of your knowledge, so.
Yes.
Anything else you want to highlight for Judge Sala right now? Feel free.
Not at this time.
This time, Your Honor, I have no further questions for Ms. Hamlin. I'd ask the court report supporting documents be made to evidence, and as I noted, it was 158 pages. She worked extremely hard on this. I want to commend her on the record for that. Thanks.
Thank you. I concur. I also really appreciate the exhibit list and the cover sheet.
Mr. Brooks?
Ma'am, you prepared this report, it says here March 28th of this year, is that right?
Yes,
Did you send a copy of that to my client?
I believe I did.
If she said she didn't get it, would you challenge that?
I thought I had added her on the email. I may have made a mistake and missed that. I do apologize.
Thank you, that's all.
Ms. Heiss?
When a goal is changed, there is a procedure to kind of include the family in a meeting and discuss through some things, correct?
Yes, a family team meeting.
So that hasn't happened yet, correct?
Correct.
So you don't disagree with my statement, but you would, if the judge did not change the goal today, you would finish that procedure and then make a decision about goal changing?
Yes.
I have nothing further.
Thank you for your testimony, Mayor Chairman Brooks.
Ma'am, do you want to testify? You do not. No, Your Honor. No witnesses.
Okay, Ms. Berger?
Mr. Paul, do you have anything to testify to today?
No, thank you.
Ms. Heiss, anyone you'd like us to hear from?
No, thank you.
Your Honor, at this time, we're not gonna formally ask for a goal change. We would ask for an FTM to be ordered. I'm gonna ask for a review in 90 days. Thank you.
Comments, Mr. Brooks?
No, I have no comment to that.
Ms. Berger?
No, Your Honor, I'd be in agreement. Thank you.
Ms. Heiss?
Your Honor, I stand by my word that I'm intending at this rate to request a goal change towards termination of parental rights. However, I do think it's important to participate in the agency procedure, and I will look forward to an invitation, and I would address it again at the next hearing. Thank you.
Well, the court finds that all parties were notified for purposes of today's review hearing. And will reserve unto you, Mr. Brooks, the opportunity for your client to raise any objections or questions on the documents that were provided to her today at the next hearing, in order to ensure that all points of conversation are handled in light of the clear direction that this case is taking. So you'll have that opportunity if you need it at the next review.
Thank you, Your Honor.
The children are in the safest and least restrictive placements at this time. I appreciate the continued diligence on simply visitation and bonding. This case does have a lot of moving parts because of the special needs of the children, and I certainly find reasonable efforts towards the goal of reunification are being made by Ms. Hamlin. I also want to say I appreciate your thoroughness and your detailed report and testimony. Yep. Thank you also to Ms. Heiss for her diligence. Obviously, she's reviewed all the documents and is keeping up and is certainly satisfying her obligations as a guardian ad litem.
Thank you.
I think today's hearing was important to signal to the parents about the barriers that continue to exist. We'll need you to demonstrate that you can make it to doctor's appointments and through visitation and progress on housing and employment and making sure that you're able to provide a safe and secure environment for the children, and as well as meet their medical needs. I don't think there's much question about what the goals are here and what the barriers are. I cannot allow the return of the children today because we need more progress in those areas. That would put them at additional risk, and they are doing well where they are, which is good, and that is thanks in part or in total nearly of our foster care placements. So thank you to them as well. These are not easy children to tackle just based on the medical aspect of it alone. So thank you also to Ms. Edwards for her attempts and support. So hopefully we'll see both of you start to make a little more progress in the next report period. The goal will remain reunification until the departments have the opportunity to have that FTM and to talk with the parents. So that will give you a little more time to demonstrate that you're dedicated to looking at some of these areas and making progress in those areas. I will say, in many cases, the statute that the court is asked to review is whether or not there's been 6 months since the case services plan was introduced, and whether or not there's been progress in a 6-month time frame. So although Ms. Heiss notes that she thinks it's early, and in many cases we allow more than 6 months, the statute does not. It merely asks me to look at whether or not there's been enough progress towards reunification in a 6-month time frame. So use your additional time wisely in the next 3-month time frame, and hopefully we'll see some progress there. In the meantime, the children again will remain in their placements. Those are the safest and least restrictive as the parents continue to work on their goals. And we'll have our next review hearing and permanency planning hearing on July 18th. At 1:30 p.m. I just want to review for the record, I had the benefit of chatting with the attorneys, including Mr. Brooks, before we got started today. It's our regular practice to ask our caseworkers to notify Ms. Johnson, my assistant, ahead of time, at least a week, in order to make arrangements to allow incarcerated parents to participate, and that was not accomplished in this case. So we don't have Mr. Rubens Zavala Garcia with us today, even though this would be the date and time regularly scheduled for his review. We are in the process of looking for a different date and time so we can specifically review the progress of his case with him. And Mr. Brooks has retired to the back office. We'll let him know when that date's gonna be. Anything else as it relates to our sidebar before we get started?
I would like us to proceed with the review on my client, the mother, Your Honor, today.
That's, I believe, was the intention. Okay, Ms. Heiss, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. What a really nice family this is. The little guy is with his aunt and uncle, and his daycare provider, generally his grandma. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, off they go into Jackson to have visits. It's closer to mom, I believe, and they live kind of that way too. So this little guy isn't speaking yet, but he is being evaluated, and it's my recommendation today. I wanted to request, based on the trauma checklist, that we have a CTAC evaluation on this young man. And I think it'll be very helpful to know which of his behaviors or developmental delays are trauma-based and which are can be dealt with CMH and all the correct. The family, when I went to visit them, had questions written down, so they're very astute and very ready to help the child. But I think a CTAC would give them the exact resources they need. As we can tell, we have a new caseworker in this case, but I think that it should be pointed out that mother is having positive screens on the days of visits. So if I'm not wrong, in this court report, it says they visit on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 to 3. And I've got positive drug screens on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And of course, the very good thing that happened was that mother and her methadone treatment provider knew that she had had a slip or that she was using. They had a plan to address it. But so I really appreciated that information. However, mom needs to be screening and calling in to check if she needs to screen every single day. And I just am looking for some further information on why the use is matching with parenting days. You know, I guess I don't know I can look here and see if it was before or after visits. But anyway, just a connection that I was making that I don't think it been brought out necessarily in the, let's see, in the court report. All the child's needs are being met. He looks forward to his visit. The visits with mom are going generally well. And I suggest we continue for another review. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Amadeo.
Department calls Kristen Smith to the stand.
Ms. Smith, come on up.
What's your position?
I'm a foster care worker at Catholic Charities.
How long have you been in that position?
A little over 3 years.
Based on your knowledge of the case, what is the current permanency goal for the child?
Reunification.
Is there a concurrent goal?
Yes, adoption.
Has respondent mother rectified the barriers that cause the child to come to your care?
She has not.
Okay. You explain the progress of respondent mother, if any, and your thoughts on that?
From my understanding, and like I said, I'm new to the case, but I was briefed on it and I have read the report. I was also included in a recent FT on What's a Family. It appears that the mother is in partial compliance with her case service plan. It's still early, so there are struggles, but she's working through them at this point, though I would say in a general standpoint, she's been partial compliance.
And we certainly appreciate you're new to the case. So best of your ability. I know you've done a lot of work real quick on this. So if you need me to clarify anything, let me know. I know I sent some questions over. I appreciate you jumping on this so quickly.
Okay.
Now, to the best of your knowledge, is mom still working nights?
Yes.
All right. And how's that going?
I am not sure. She sent me, I believe, a couple new pay stubs today via text. So to my knowledge, she's still employed. Nothing's changed in that area.
has, and I guess we don't know about responding father, he's not gonna be here, or what's going on with responding father?
He's incarcerated.
We just couldn't read him over today, correct?
Correct. I do believe that the previous caseworker, she did speak with him via phone, I believe on the 17th. And then she also there was a proof of service that she had sent to the prison. It was just never returned.
Being so new to the case and with him being in prison, you don't have a lot of knowledge of responding father at this moment, right?
Correct.
Can you explain what services have been offered to mom?
Random drug screening, substance abuse assessment, substance abuse treatment, parenting education, supervised visitation, a psychological evaluation, which I believe we just received. That was, I think, submitted later after the court report was, but I believe that was also submitted.
While you're new to the case, you have a lot of experience in the field. Do you think there's substantial risk if there's reunification today?
Yes.
You recommend a goal change at all?
No.
From your research, has there been any change in placement during the review period?
No.
To your knowledge, has the placement done everything they're supposed to do to meet your standards?
Yes.
Are there any additional needs that you think are needed for the children right now?
Not at this time.
Anything else you want to highlight? Okay, Your Honor, at this point, we're just going to ask that you admit the court report and any supporting documents are presented.
No objection.
No objection.
Thank you. They are received. There's a good indication of what's included on the front page. And those documents are in fact included in my version, so I'll trust the attorneys to let me know if they did get something on that list.
I'm going to presume that you probably not had an opportunity to speak to my client. Would that be accurate?
I've spoken with her, yes.
Okay. I see in the report there is a barrier of transportation. Have you discussed with her what we can do to alleviate that barrier?
Yes, her and I spoke this morning.
Okay, thanks. What are your thoughts about alleviating any transportation barriers?
The agency can provide her with either bus tickets or bus tokens for Jackson, as well as gas cards.
Didn't I read in the report that's already being done or not?
I'm not sure. When I spoke with her this morning, she said that she appreciated that and would take both of those.
Okay, great. Okay. And have you received the negative drug test results of April 3rd this year? I don't think you have. Have you?
I don't believe so, unless that was part of what she had sent me this morning.
Okay, I'm going to submit this. So I have no further questions. Thank you. Well, yeah, I do. Can you maybe summarize what the strengths of my client would be as you see them on her case?
To my knowledge, I have not seen her with her son, but what I have read in the report and what I've heard from the agency is that she does very well with him, that she is tentative, she is consistently attending parenting times. She's open to suggestions, she's open to services.
And it appears as though you are aware that she, as a guardian litem, alluded to that she has tested positive for fentanyl use during visits, correct?
Correct.
It appears as though, would you agree that she's a functioning addict and that it really has not impacted? I haven't seen in the reports on her parenting time, her behaviors have not been to the point where you'd want to terminate parenting time, correct?
Correct. I personally haven't supervised the parenting time, but to my knowledge, nothing has been reported that we would request a suspension of visits. No.
Okay, thank you.
We would like to keep them supervised.
Absolutely. Nothing further.
I believe there exists somewhere a log that we can tell what time of day the screen was taken on mother. Are you aware of that log?
Yes, it should. I at least know through forensic fluids, it should say the time that it was received.
Collected.
Or, yeah.
On these reports that I'm seeing on your court report, it looks like the date and time received by forensic fluids is recorded, but the date collected doesn't have a time. Would you be willing to look for the log so we can see if she's testing before or after visits?
Yes.
Or even ask her. Are the visits causing her stress, or what is leading to that use connected to visits? The last court order required us to have a substance abuse disorder assessment. Have we done that? Has she been referred for that?
I'm not sure, to my knowledge, because she is receiving services, I believe through Victory Clinic. I believe her substance abuse assessment and treatment is all taking place.
If possible, can we have a copy of that evaluation that got her into that treatment?
Yes, I'm not sure, that could have been one of the exhibits that was submitted after. I believe that there were 2 exhibits, one was submitted first with the court report.
And she is progressing with her psychological assessment?
Yes, we did receive the psychological evaluation, I believe the day after the court report was submitted, and I think that is exhibit 2. I think that's the second part of what was submitted.
We're supposed to have a parenting time recommendation from the therapist for the child regarding father's visits. Is this child in therapy, or will you make sure that he has a therapist so that we can find what the healthy combination is for him in his father's visits?
Yes, I believe he's, we're working with CMH in Washtenaw County right now for infant mental health services.
Do you disagree that maybe a CTAC evaluation would be helpful to the family to know the child's strengths and deficits?
With his age paired with his extreme lack of communication, and this is just my personal opinion, but I am not sure that a CTAC would be very beneficial. Obviously, if the court orders it, we will absolutely make that referral. But just in what I've seen with younger kids who are verbalizing, CTAC sometimes at the age of 3, it is a little difficult.
But then the CMH counselor at some point would have some kind of assessment for us about whether he's more trauma, depression, anxiety, whatever's going on for the little guy.
Correct.
Yeah.
CMH would be more of like an ongoing services that would, be able to work with him more than once. I just feel like a CTAC would.
Yeah.
It's a big assessment for a little guy who doesn't talk, so it might be difficult.
We could give those resources that generally come at the end of a CTAC to the family, and they
Correct.
can explore it on their own. I thought of that too. Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
I have one follow-up.
Go ahead.
Did I hear you indicate, because I don't see that in my packet, that the results of the psychological evaluation have already been received?
I believe the psychological evaluation was submitted shortly after the court report, but I believe that it was submitted to the court and the attorneys.
Okay, maybe it was a separate date.
I think that there were like 2 court packets is what it looked like, and I believe it said like exhibit 2, and the only thing in that was the psychological evaluation and maybe a parent agency treatment plan for the father.
We're checking Mike as well.
I do see that. Labeled as exhibit 2.
Exhibit 2C, they have it.
When did that come through, and can somebody tell me if my office or the clerk's office was
Yes.
included in that, because I don't have it.
Dated March 29th is the date of the evaluation.
Looks like it was sent, Judge, on March 31st to all parties, including the court.
Okay.
If you don't have it, we'll supplement it, but I believe it was March 31st.
I do have, I believe I have a copy there.
You do? That would be great if you don't want
If
it. It could very well be floating over in the clerk's office somewhere. And I just didn't have.
you just, I can hopefully find it for you.
Sure.
Would you be willing to contact the assessment center over at Western Michigan University and send them a copy of his trauma screening checklist and ask if they thought that it would be useful or appropriate to have a conversation with them about whether or not because that's a high score. 12 is high.
Ms. Smith, while you're giving exhibits to the court, my
What was missing?
exhibit 2 has a whole list of documents.
I just saw that as well. It should include the psychological evaluation.
Yeah.
Did Caitlin Smith receive a copy of the psychological evaluation and the packet that we have? It came after the report?
To my knowledge, yes.
Oh, my record.
I think I have a proof of service here as well. The proof of service that I have from the previous worker dated on 3/28 at 1 p.m. She was provided a copy at, I believe, it looks like our Jackson office.
I just inquire when.
Oh, I apologize. There's a second proof of service. She was provided by email.
What date?
This was on 3/31.
Have you been, I see there are about 5 recommendations on the psychological evaluation. Have you gone over those recommendations with my client? I know it's,
I have not.
you have not. You intend to do that in the near future with her?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
All right, so, counselors, are you expecting me to, receive the additional exhibits as part of what's been already entered?
I would like to ask my client, Your Honor, and see if she would waive the 7-day notice.
Ms. Caitlin Smith.
Please raise your right hand. You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Can you unmute and then answer, please?
There we go. I do. Sorry. I do.
Thank you.
You can put your hand down. How would you like me to address you today? How would you like me to address you today?
Doesn't matter. Miss Smith is fine.
Okay, Ms. Smith, you have you received a copy of the psychological evaluation results?
I have.
Do you like the court to accept that as an exhibit today? Are you okay with that?
Yeah. Yep. I need some more explaining, but I'm assuming I'll do that with my caseworker.
Well, right. The caseworker is going to go over, and you can also schedule a telephone conference with me to go over any time.
That
You
sounds
have
good.
7 days. You're supposed to receive these 7 days in advance, but we're asking to waive that so the court can receive.
Yeah,
a
that's
copy of
fine.
that. Thank you. Okay. You have submitted to me, and I've shared with local counsel. You have a drug screening results from Victory Clinic Services 3 dated 4/3/23, which says that you tested negative for any drugs. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. It took a. Go ahead. Sorry.
Would you like the court to accept that today as an exhibit?
I would.
Your Honor, I have shared that with counsel by email.
Yep, we did.
Yes.
Or receipt was stipulated too.
Caitlin, the court has your negative drug test results. You probably heard the guardian litem indicate that at some visits you were testing positive for fentanyl.
Correct.
And is there some type of trigger that perhaps would cause you to use on a date that you have a visit?
No, and I didn't even use on those days. So it took a while for me to get to my, it's called a stable dose. They dose us once a day, and it took about almost 8 weeks for me to get to the point where I wasn't sick anymore. It wasn't about using this to get high, it was to not be sick. So 2 weeks ago, I saw the doctor again. I got to my stable dose. So I know you only have one, but I have my last 2 drug screens actually were completely negative. So now that I'm at that stable dose, there's not going to be a reason for me to use anymore. It was honestly, that stuff can stay in your system for a long time after one use. So it was never using before my things with my son. It was just the fact that my dose wasn't high enough to last me 24 hours, but I'm finally at that stable dose. So it took a little bit to go to the hump, but I finally got over it. So
now the court report indicates that you've had a barrier of transportation, and you've heard the worker testify. She had a chat with you about how to alleviate that. Is that to your satisfaction?
No, actually not, because before it helped because Kayla lived in Jackson. So for example, tomorrow my son has an appointment, but the new worker lives in Adrian. And so it's gas card. I mean, not to hurt anything to her, but gas cards aren't going to help me get there. Do you know what I mean? And in a couple of months, my boyfriend and I should have another vehicle, but right now I don't have a vehicle. So getting to Adrian or Lenawee County is extremely hard for me. So I've been making his appointments thus far. Kayla's was a huge help to me. But so the next couple of weeks, I don't know what we could do to help me get to those appointments, I guess, because I don't want to miss out. She did say I could attend but via Zoom. So if I have to do that the next couple of weeks, I will, as far as like his appointments go. But
let me ask you, would you like to have somebody transport you to the appointments? Is that what we're hearing?
If it's at all possible, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And with
if
gas
not, I
cards,
understand. But
with gas cards, is there nobody you know who you could give gas cards to transport you?
I honestly cut off all my friends, so I don't talk to anybody.
And I suspect that these are individuals that would probably not be people you should have contact with. Am I correct on
Exactly.
that?
Exactly. I
Okay.
literally do not, yeah, I just talked to my boyfriend, that's it, so.
Other than the transportation, is there anything that we can do to assist you?
Just the biggest thing is, so Kayla recommended me to Lifeways for the psychiatric exam. And when I called them, they told me, that they weren't accepting new patients, I guess. And then, so I had my psychological review in Hillsdale. I thought they were the same thing, but Kayla explained to me they're different. So I just need some help as far as, where to go next to get to a psychiatric, exam. And I read over those things that the psychologist said, and I'm willing to do all of those. I'm working on getting a sponsor through my NA. But I guess really transportation, because I'd like to go to some NA meetings in person more than just Zoom. Do you know what I mean? But like I said, the biggest thing is I spend about $80 a week in Lyft and Uber to see my son, which is totally fine because it's worth it to me. But besides that, you know, it's in Jackson, so it's doable. Do you know what I mean? But to drive to Adrian to get to Lyft to Adrian, it's like $70 one way. So
I don't want you to give us an address, but where are you physically residing right now?
Jackson County.
Are you living in a village or a city?
In a city, yeah, in a house.
So have you checked with the court there about when AA and where AA meetings are to see if there's anything even within walking distance? Have you checked that out?
Yeah, I just got a pamphlet actually 2 days ago from Victory. So I'm gonna start calling to see this. The town I live in is quite small. The bus system doesn't go here every day. So I'm trying to figure out. I know if I can get to the city of Jackson, then I can attend some.
Wait, so you don't live in the city of Jackson itself? Is that what
I do not.
I misunderstood?
Correct.
Okay.
It would be a lot easier if I did. A lot easier.
Okay. Have we covered everything that you think that you would like us to cover today?
I think so. Yeah.
We'll see if other attorneys have questions for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm William Amadeo. I'm the prosecutor on this case. Did you hear my worker, Krista Smith, testify earlier?
I did.
Just point of order, just not prosecutor, but the attorney for the agency. So my client doesn't think criminal. Thank you.
Yeah. The attorney for the agency, I apologize, Mr. McFarland. I'll try to be better in the future. So Ms. Smith, did you hear my worker, Kristen Smith, testify earlier?
I did.
Okay. Do you understand that she'll be in charge of your case?
I do.
Do you understand that at this moment she's recommending reunification?
Correct.
Do you know what that means?
Yeah.
Okay, can you tell me what you think that means?
Well, ultimately, when I do everything that's expected of me, and I can provide a safe environment for my son to get back custody of him fully.
Okay. So what we do, so you understand, is I'm not gonna have much contact with you.
Okay.
Ms. Smith. So whatever she tells you to do is going to help your case as long as you follow her. Okay.
Sounds good.
If there's a transportation problem or a financial problem, please let her know. She'll work to help you out. But you do have to follow what she explains, okay?
Makes sense.
Okay. Nice talking to you. It worked out for you, man.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Smith, do you have a driver's license that's valid?
It's suspended because I didn't pay some tickets, but I'm working on getting it paid off. So once I pay the tickets off, I will have a driver's license again. But it's not valid currently at this time. I owe like $700, so I think it is.
You have an open criminal case in Lenawee, a felony, is that correct?
Correct.
And that's for back in around the time when this case opened up, controlled substance?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then any other pending charges?
No.
In any county?
Nope.
And I thought you were gonna check out inpatient treatment.
I talked to my counselor at Victory, and we've talked about that. But since my last two drug screens were negative, and that since I got to my stable dose, she wants to wait and see how the next couple months go, and then we're gonna talk about that. I'm willing to do whatever they say. You know what I mean? I've seen the doctor, I've seen my counselor. I'm going off their recommendation. But I'm absolutely, like I said, whatever they think I need to do, I'm all for it. I'll do whatever. I started my parenting classes also. Like I said, and there's a lot, so I'm just trying to do one step at a time. You know what I mean? I'm trying to just check off the boxes. Like I said, I'm willing to do whatever they tell me I should do after my psychiatric exam as well. I've called some places and left some voicemail, so I'm kind of waiting on that too to get my psychiatric exam to see what they say I should do. But yeah,
Do you
like I said,
agree
I'm willing
that-
to do whatever.
Do you agree that the child's needs are being met in his temporary placement?
Yep.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
I'm gonna ask for a 90-day review. Right now, I'm gonna rely on my worker for what she wants to do here. At this point, she'll only be on the case 24 hours. But she is still recommending reunification. I hope we get to that point. So I'm rooting for Ms. Smith, see where we're at in 90 days. We'll take it from there.
Thank you. Mr. McFarland.
I agree.
Right, well, before I make my closing findings, there are a few things I'm gonna just put together for Ms. Smith. Including so I've looked at all the exhibits, and one thing I noticed was on the ICWA inquiry, the child's name is not spelled correctly. So it's spelled correctly on like the last page, but not the first page. So we have proof that the inquiry was sent and that you received the green card back. But I think you'll have to reach out to the BIA to see what search they ran to make sure they ran the name correctly. You could also supply them with the names of the parents. Sometimes that's helpful, or grandparents if you have that information to make that search more effective. I am going to ask you to track down a copy of the SUD assessment as was previously requested. I'm going to ask you to send a copy of the psychological assessment to Ms. Smith's SUD provider at Victory, as she's talked about, as well as to any individual therapy provider. Again, the conversation with the providers at WMU to see if the trauma assessment could be helpful for us, for the child. And thank you for the DHS 69 and for your efforts. So the court finds all interested parties were given notice for purposes of today's review hearing. We will have to look for a different time to do the review hearing for Mr. Brooks's client, which we will do. And we'll have to have you back for that as well to testify on it, but we won't need Mr. McFarland or Ms. Smith. You're welcome to join us, but you don't have to. As far as reasonable efforts, there are reasonable efforts being made towards the goal of reunification for Ms. Smith and her son. Lots of services and evaluations in place and already in progress, which is great. Obviously, the sooner the better on those, and the sooner the better on progress through services. I also find Ms. Heist being satisfaction of her obligations. Thank you as always.
Thank you.
The child is in the safest and least restrictive placement at this time, while his mother embarks on services, and hopefully she'll be able to show us sustained recovery from substances and progress in some important areas like transportation, visitation, involvement in his care, employment and housing, so that we can look at successful reunification. And congratulations on beginning some of those services already, Ms. Smith. Good
Thank
job.
you.
All right. Meantime, child will remain in that placement. And we'll have our next review hearing July 18th at 2:30 as it relates to your case, Ms. Caitlin Smith. And our review for the father will be 4/21 at 9:30, assuming everyone's available.